Hello. Welcome to a podcast on law and its impact on computing, technology, and business. This is Brian Gaff. I'm a senior member of the IEEE and a partner at the McDermott, Will & Emery law firm in Boston. The IEEE is presenting this podcast in conjunction with my column that appears each month in Computer Magazine, a publication of the IEEE's Computer Society. That column discusses legal issues relevant to people in the computer hardware, software, networking, and service businesses. In the last podcast, I discussed legal career options for engineers and scientists. This podcast will discuss some risks involving the use of social media, which is the topic of the January 2014 column in Computer Magazine. Social media has experienced an explosive growth over the last few years. It's clear that social media started a few decades ago with bulletin board systems. It grew with sites like Classmates.com and MySpace, and the dominant players today include companies like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. These social media platforms are vibrant vehicles for people to connect, communicate, and share information. Now, social media platforms generally permit freewheeling discussions and information exchange, usually in the form of simple text, but also in the form of photos and videos and the like. There usually aren't too many obstacles in the way to this freewheeling discussion, and that can create a problem for companies, typically in the form of oversharing, that is, posting publicly too much information. Now, when that information includes inappropriate material, like confidential data belonging to the poster's employer, the problem gets magnified. The problem becomes even more urgent if the posting was a calculated attempt to harm the company instead of being due to simple inadvertence. So how does a company deal with this? Well, it can try to block its employees' use of social media, at least during the workday. But that probably isn't realistic. As I noted in the column, that most people today are carrying smartphones, and the so-called BYOD, bring your own device, method of operation seems to be very commonplace. So it's really not realistic for a company to outright ban accessing social media, because employees will have their own equipment and will do what they need to do to access sites whenever they feel that they should. So the best way to deal with this is probably, from a company's perspective, to have a two-pronged approach based on policy and policing. The first prong, policy, relates to having a company-wide policy in place about how social media may be used. It needs to be comprehensive, and all employees need to be trained on adhering to it, particularly on the first day of employment and on the last day of employment. It's imperative that the policy make clear that confidential or proprietary data cannot be posted, and the company may want to put additional restrictions on what employees can post. But it's important not to overreach. The company needs to understand what it can reasonably demand from its employees, what kind of control the company can have on the employees' behavior when they're away from work or off premises. And it's important, as I said, not to overreach and be reasonable with the limits that are put in place. And if you're an employee, don't assume the First Amendment will give you the right to post what you want. That's usually not a good mindset to have. Now, the second prong, policing, relates to a company having systems in place to monitor what's being said or posted about it on social media sites. The bottom line is that vigilance is the key, and a fast response to improper postings is necessary. Now, it becomes a very serious problem if a company's social media presence or account is hacked and bogus information sent, disguised as official corporate information. There's been no shortage of reports of companies' Twitter accounts getting hacked and things along this line happening. If that happens, the company and its IT department need to work closely with the social media platform provider, and maybe law enforcement as well, to secure the company's social media account and identify the culprit. Now, that party could receive both civil and criminal penalties. There are a number of statutory provisions that dictate penalties and so forth for improperly or unauthorized access to a computer system. In the event of an attack like this, the company also needs to assess whether any of its confidential or proprietary data have been compromised. Now, obviously, that includes things like internal company documents and specifications, possibly new product plans and things of that type. But it also includes determining whether any confidential customer information was compromised and whether any other breaches in privacy occurred. As you might know, there are a number of laws at the state level that are very comprehensive and dictate penalties and procedures and the like when there's a privacy breach. So when you read stories about a laptop being stolen with customer accounts or social security numbers of individuals being part of what was stolen, the notice of such breaches, the steps that companies have to take when a breach like that occurs, and the penalties that a company can face for not providing adequate security for the confidential, proprietary, or customer data, those penalties can be quite severe. So if there is a situation where there's a hacking of a social media account and the company needs to ensure that that action, that hacking, did not compromise further data in the company's systems, sometimes information that can be gleaned from a company's social media account can be used to further compromise a company's internal systems and so forth. But the bottom line is to do a very comprehensive examination of what the exposure was, because that will indicate what the potential liability is for such a breach. Now, in general, companies shouldn't hesitate to exploit social media to enhance their public personas and also improve their sales, marketing, and customer support efforts. However, the virtually unrestricted exchange of information that's a hallmark of a social media site can really create problems for companies who don't maintain reasonable oversight to prevent the spread of harmful information. And it's imperative that a company maintains vigilance and is constantly assessing how it stands, how it's perceived, how it's presented in the social media space to ensure that inappropriate information is not being propagated in cyberspace, which could lead to potentially damages and liability levied against the company for actions that a culprit or other bad actor might take that the company could have prevented had it been more reasonable with its security efforts. I hope you found this very brief presentation helpful on social media pitfalls. For more information, you can certainly check the article in the 2014 issue of Computer Magazine. However, if you would like to contact me, you can feel free to do so via email at bgaff@mwe.com. Please stay tuned for next month's column in Computer Magazine. Until next time, this is Brian Gaff.